Government Operations. Today is Tuesday, June 3rd, and we are starting this meeting at exactly 8:35 a.m. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Very good. Councilmember Padilla?
Present.
Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Jurado? Not present.
Okay, now let's move forward with taking public comment on individual agenda items, multiple agenda items, and general public comment. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as possible. We will then move through the agenda one item at a time, listen to presentations, and vote on items accordingly. Can you please read the rules?
Very good. Those who wish to give public comment on the items can sign up at the kiosk at the back of the room. There'll be 1 minute for each item for a maximum of 2 minutes.
No, I think it's a special meeting, so we're doing one for general.
There's no general comment on special meetings unless you wish to take it.
Okay, so it's just 1 minute, right?
It's just 1 minute per item.
Per item, exactly, no general. Okay, let's begin. Who's reading the roll? Last name, Luna Reyes.
Alexis Luna Reyes. Appreciate it. All right, what items will you be speaking to today?
I'm here to speak on agenda items number 1 and 6.
All right, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, council members. My name is Alexis Luna Reyes, and I'm an owner and operator at JC Rad, a social equity cannabis business proudly based in District 14. We've been operating since 2019 and currently hold active licenses for distribution, light manufacturing, and non-storefront retail. I urge the City Council to stop the Department of Cannabis Regulation of increasing any annual renewal fees for social equity operators. I urge the City Council to pause the lottery for 2025 of any new cannabis licenses until critical issues with the current social equity program are addressed. Social equity operators like myself are still facing major challenges. The support we were promised from grant funding to business assistance has been limited. Adding new licenses before resolving these core problems would only make matters worse. Before the program expands, the city must ensure that the current operators are stable, supported, and given a fair opportunity to succeed. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you are giving these agendas attention.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll name a few names off the list, if you don't mind making line near the sergeants over there. Damian Martin, Elliot Lewis, Paul Scrivano. Good morning, Speaker. What items will you be speaking to today?
My name is Damian Martin. I'm co-founder and attorney for Catalyst Cannabis Co. I'll be speaking to items number 1 and number 6.
You have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chair, committee, public, staff. On item 1, or starting with item 6, here in support of the item, thank you, Councilmember Padilla, Councilmember Price, for making the motion. The madness just has to stop. All the current businesses are failing as is. The idea that we'd be adding 100 new businesses is honestly just crazy. On that note, we have speakers come up here at every meeting, talk about the struggles that they're all facing. The DCR likes to deny that fact and just keep adding licenses and licenses. The idea, I think, for the DCR is just to collect more fees. So on that note, item 1, I've submitted a written public comment about the fact that the fees that the DCR is collecting are totally misspent. Instead of being spent on enforcement against unlicensed operations that just proliferate the city, there's almost 4,000 of them. They spend money on, harassing licensed operators, classes that nobody uses, and thankfully and hopefully they won't be spending money on this lottery. The DCR and the city's attorney's office likes to claim that they don't have the authority. My public comment provides clear indication they do have the authority, And really, the real reason that the DCR doesn't want to actually go out and do enforcement against unlicensed operations is because that would take away from the cushy life that they're all living right now. Mr. Killeen, he's making more money than the mayor. The DCR staff, they all work remotely. There's office hours only 2 days a week for like 3 hours. They don't want to go out and face the problem because it's hard work and it's scary. They don't want to do it. They want to sit in their office and continue to collect their fat checks. Thanks.
Thank you, Speaker. Next speaker. Please state your name and the items you'll be speaking to.
1 and 6. My name is Elliot Lewis, CEO of Catalyst Cannabis Co. I want to thank Padilla for bringing this motion forward, as well as Curran Price for seconding it. Look, I know in politics a lot of times we make things more complicated than they are. We want to do this study or that study or whatever it is, but what we're really asking for here is radical change. We need radical change. And anytime there's a fee study or a study, what's decided is going to happen is where the study is going to end, and all the paperwork in between is all the paperwork in between. Now, I don't want to be presumptuous, but being that we got a first and a second, usually these things pass unanimously once that happens, or close to unanimously. So what we need is heroes, right? People that understand that there's radical change that's needed. And I think there's a real easy way to make your decisions that should be your guiding light. It should be real easy. The idea behind the LA Cannabis Program was to bring in social equity operators into the legal market, right? And we should always look as a bar, is this better than we're treating the black market? And generally speaking, when you pass a policy, the litmus test should be, is this gonna make the black market stronger, or is this gonna make the legal market stronger? Is this better for the legal market or worse than for the legal market than the black market? Right now, the legal market is getting treated substantially worse than the black market, right? Black market's being left untouched, untaxed, and the legal market has all the burdens of regulation, overtaxation, and just total ridiculous saturation. So, we appreciate any progress we can get. Again, we want to thank the motion maker and the second. It's always super important to get out of all the, BS fee studies and lies coming from DCR. That's just what it is. But we need radical change. We need a hero. And we appreciate the first step by Councilwoman Padilla and Curran Price. But we're begging you, all of us, we need a hero. Let's keep advancing this issue. We need revolutionary change. Weed for the people.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll name out a few other names listed here. Daniel Sosa, Tiffany Wright, and Paul Scrivano. Please state your name and the items you'll be speaking to.
I'm sorry?
Please state your name and the items you'll be speaking to.
My name is Daniel Sosa. I'm speaking on item 1.
All right, you have 1 minute.
Cannabis industry is broken here in Los Angeles. It's good to see that we're starting to make a little bit of progress, but I just want to remind everybody that the one fundamental issue is overtaxation. Alcohol and tobacco are taxed at a fraction of 1% in the city, and those drugs kill people. We are taxed at 10%, and we are drowning in taxes. There are thousands of illegal dispensaries and smoke shops running rampant in Los Angeles that are paying 0 tax, and we are paying 10% tax, and we are drowning in debt. The average dispensary is in over $1 million in debt to the city of Los Angeles. Does that seem like social equity? It doesn't to me. We need some fundamental change, and the most fundamental thing we need to change is lowering the taxes to less than 1% on cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning, Speaker. Please state your name and the items you'll be speaking to.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Wright. I'm here to address agenda item number 1. Thank you for taking the time to hear my public comment. The current tax and fee structure in the city of Los Angeles can only be described as predatory. I love this city. I appreciate the time of the council representatives in hearing this issue, and I find it hard to believe that any of you wish to be complicit in being predators especially on the weakest, most marginalized members of our community social equity licensees. If DCR, the City of Los Angeles, or anybody in a position to do anything to help us were to actually understand the economics of our business, we wouldn't be here to begin with. We have to eliminate excessive fees, we have to reduce the taxes to below 1%, and we need change now. Otherwise, you will have generational karma on your hands, and you will be clearly identified as predators. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. One last call for Paul Scrivano. Paul Scrivano. All right. If you didn't get a chance to sign up and you want to speak, please make your way towards the sergeants. Going once, going twice. Chair, that exhausts public comment.
Okay, very good. So could we now officially close public comment, Mr. Clerk? We're closed? Very good.
Yeah, we're closed.
Okay, colleagues, now I ask that we hear presentations for items 1 through 5 and hold 6 for comments. Any objections? That's good. 1 through 5 presentation, they'll vary in length, and 6 for comments. Okay, so I want to begin with items 2 and 3 together. I believe we have representatives from GSD here to present.
Okay, we'll go ahead and read those then. Budget motion Price Hut relative to amending the mayor's proposed budget for 2025-26 to restore funding and positions in the General Services Department to be offset by funding from the Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund. This matter is also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee. Item number 3 is a budget motion, Price Nazarian, relative to amending the mayor's proposed budget for 2025-26 to restore funding and 5 positions in the General Services Department for the Special Services Group to be offset by a reduction in the postage account. This matter has also been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
We're good? Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Good morning. First of all, I would just like to thank this committee for its continuous support of GSD and to be a champion of our efforts. As our general manager has said before, we are the heart of the city, and so your support of us is really helping all of the other departments and ultimately the residents of the city. So item number 2, as explained by the clerk, is a motion to restore positions that are funded by the Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund. The majority are with our Supply Services Division, so purchasing, warehousing, and supporting their commodity needs. There's also a heavy-duty equipment mechanic who supports their vehicles. And item number 3 are 5 positions in our Special Services Division, so those positions are support our access control system, so all of the badging and the control of the readers. Also support our special events, so lightings, filming, requests to use city facilities, and also general security projects managed by GSD.
Okay, very good. You know, I don't really have a reason not to support this. I just wanted to make, the reason why during the budget hearings I wanted to bring it to committee was because I hadn't heard about it. You know, usually by, I guess tradition would be a good word to use. By tradition, I guess I'm just used to related departments to committee come usually to the chair, members of the committee for those sorts of things. So I was a little thrown off and just wanted to make sure that for the record it came to the appropriate committee so we can at least have some time to hear from you. Colleagues, any questions? Okay, I think we could do a roll call. Thank you for that presentation.
Okay, for item number 2, Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee. Aye. Councilmember Jurado.
Yes.
And for for item number 3, Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee. Aye. Councilmember Jurado.
Yes.
Those 2 matters are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now go to item 4? Which I believe is CLA is here to present on this. Please come forward.
Item number 4, CLA report relative to the success of Logistics Victory Los Angeles and lessons learned that could enhance procurement of critical supplies and materials.
Good morning, Josh Drake from the CLA's office. This is just a report that gives kind of an overview of the Logistics Victory LA program. which was the Port, GSD, CAO, City Attorney, and some of the other departments working together during the pandemic to provide critical personal protective equipment to stakeholders in the community. This is kind of a one-off program to respond to the pandemic, provide people with equipment they couldn't get otherwise or would have to get at a pretty big markup because of all the price gouging going on early in the pandemic. The program went on for a while, and then it was kind of mothballed, and then reactivated again during the fires to provide N95 masks to the public. The report kind of goes through the history of the program and some of the lessons learned and some of the successes.
For the record, can you just kind of summarize some of those lessons?
The main takeaway, I think, would be that the city, well, first, the city staff was really good at responding to something that was not a city responsibility or like in the city's like wheelhouse per se. But some of the things are like that we should think about in the long term, or warehousing costs. If we're going to do a program like this in the future, which hopefully we never have to do this again, it does cost a lot of money to warehouse this equipment. The other thing is this distribution of equipment. People would have to come down to the port to get this stuff, and that was not super user-friendly for some organizations. That's probably the biggest takeaways.
Okay, and I'm assuming the port issue was more prevalent for COVID than it was for the fires?
This was by far a response to COVID. It just, we happen to have a lot of N95s left after COVID that they were able to give out during the fires.
I got it. So would you say that you learned from COVID in preparation for the fires, so to speak?
I don't know if you would say you learned from COVID. That we were just lucky to have these masks around.
Got it.
But
okay.
we also were warehousing them for a long time without any use.
So do we still have a good supply?
I think, I'm not sure if GST or Port's here to answer how much is left in the supply, but there's a good amount of masks.
Okay, no further questions.
You said this program's a success. So are we currently warehousing additional supplies?
I would need the Port to answer if there's still
Okay,
stuff
but
left.
you're saying the procurement process of it all is somehow successful, or?
It was successful in that city staff was able to procure this equipment pretty quickly at a reasonable price when other entities were having trouble getting the equipment.
And so do we have sort of like an ongoing agreement so that next time, you're saying that it failed, not failed, but wasn't as, we didn't run out of supplies for the fires, we didn't have necessary supplies, so why wasn't that procurement sort of put in place then to react to that as well?
I think there was no need to procure additional equipment for the fires. Well, for masks. This is very much related just to N95s. But for COVID, it was important at the very beginning when other people were having trouble getting this equipment. But as the supply chains evened out towards the end of the pandemic, us having millions of N95 masks was less useful.
Mm-hmm. Do we have something sort of in place with any companies that if some situation were to occur in the future, like we warehouse stuff in our district and Councilman Blumenfield's district, so that when emergencies happen, we have a warehouse of supplies, stuff like that. So city doesn't have anything like that currently, or do we?
Good morning, Liz Uslan with the General Services Department. So the personal protective equipment that was brought on in support of COVID is stored at the Port warehouse. This is an emergency stockpile that was established. The N95s that were distributed during the firestorm emergency was surplus. So that's why it was readily available to distribute earlier this year. As far as warehousing personal protective equipment or PPE throughout the city, we do have inventory levels that are added on or increased as we enter into the hotter months, as we prepare for various fires throughout the year, or if there's other types of emergencies such as rainy seasons or civil unrest. So that is brought on board as needs of departments of first responders like fire or police, bring that to general services attention. So there is adequate inventory as we prepare for emergencies. COVID was a very rare instance, as CLA referenced. This was a higher demand where it was global, so the competition was worldwide. And as we brought in the emergency supplies for the city, we were able to leverage relationships we had with current vendors. And those relationships are ongoing.
So unless the situation is global again, you feel
Yes.
pretty confident that we'd be able to,
Correct. I think in addition to one of our largest lessons learned besides storage that we are continuing to face is disposal. So some of the PPEs are considered hazardous material, so it becomes a challenge as we come up on various expiration dates.
thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for being here and providing this report back. I was wondering, it seemed like this was able to emerge during an quickly adapt to it. And so, given that this contract emerged in the environment where we had supply chain issues, is there any lessons learned that we could possibly gain regarding procurement in case there are future supply chain issues that may come, whether it has to do with tariffs or anything like that? So, lessons in contracting that made it more.
There's always lessons to be learned in any unforeseen circumstance. So looking back, our biggest lesson learned is making sure we have not necessarily the ongoing relationships, but the market could be stabilized. So not entering into contracting for quantities that we're not going to be able to utilize within a certain duration. As I alluded to earlier, disposal costs continue to be a challenge today because not knowing how long the pandemic was going to last and how much demand there was going to be within the city, and we were trying to support the various medical facilities and schools, and not knowing when the market would stabilize itself, the biggest challenge that we foresaw was projecting what the actual demand was going to be for our citywide constituents and facilities we were trying to support. So looking forward, we would attempt to contract for quantities in certain periods or phases rather than for a longer term duration.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I imagine for this longer duration, the wholesale price probably went significantly down in a very competitive market, and so committing to yourself to a longer term made the price more feasible. But even in contracting, contracting for a short term with an option to renew, even if it's 3 months, 6 months, and if they're a long-standing vendor, I think maybe they'd be amenable to such an arrangement. But I guess that's some of what I extrapolated as a lesson learned from what you're saying as well. And so wondering who handled the as we continue to move on in this volatile economy, we're not going to have all the data in front of us, right? And so we still have to be a city and responsive and support and govern and address the emergency at hand, whatever they may be. And so figuring out how we can do that within the confines and not waiting for definite market data sometimes to respond, because I don't want us to also slow down our process in terms of procuring what we need.
Absolutely. And as you alluded to, with tariffs looming in the future and no actual fixed percentage, it is difficult to forecast how that impact is going to be factored into long-term budgets. It's very difficult to gauge that in any economic crisis, but constant communications with our contract vendors does allow us to gauge and communicate with the customer departments what that could potentially look like.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmembers David Labatique, Deputy Executive Director, Port of Los Angeles.
Can you move the mic closer to your? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, good morning. David Libatique, Deputy Executive Director, Port of Los Angeles. In addition to the lessons learned shared by the CLA and GSD, the role of the mayor's office was critical because we weren't just coordinating vendors and release from the city stockpile. There was an ongoing effort. There were county, state stockpiles that were being routed through EOC. There were donations that were being made. There was constant vetting of the suppliers, getting through, there were people who were offering PPE at inflated prices, really unacceptable terms, or they couldn't speak to the veracity or guarantee the veracity and the legitimacy of the PPE. So vetting that process while we're distributing donations, handling the payments for the city stockpile, but also coordinating that with the state and county stockpiles. That level of coordination needs to come from somewhere. It comes from the mayor's office. So in addition to LA, there's this broader city effort to respond to a pandemic or a crisis of that sort.
Okay, helpful, thank you.
Okay, I don't think we're good with questions. We can vote on item 4. Thank you all for being here.
Madam Chair, the action of the committee on that one would be?
Vote to, I believe it's a note and file?
Very good. Councilmember Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember Jurado?
Okay, now we can move over to item 5. We also have a presentation here from CAO.
Okay. Item number 5, CAO report relative to the fiscal year 2024-25 6 construction projects report. This matter has also been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Please proceed.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Chair and committee members. I am Latanya Rue with the Office of the CAO. Before you is the 2024-25 6 Construction Projects Report, also known as CPR, which is a standalone report. And it does not include transactions, which you would regularly see in a CPR. Typically, the CPR is for major capital projects that have either shortfalls or require additional funding request. Also be aware that the projects in a typical CPR are all construction-related activities that were previously approved in the adopted city budget. This report before you includes recommendations to reauthorize projects included in the 2025-26 adopted city budget to ensure that MICLA funds are available to city departments early in the new fiscal year to prevent any project delays. This project also authorizes the MICLA funding, which is expired or soon to be expired, to continue authority for the listed projects in the report. As you may know, we have to reauthorize all projects that are proposed for MICLA financing before spending those MICLA funds. In the past, the CPR had included recommendations to reauthorize MICLA funds in the first CPR, which is typically approved by the council and mayor around late September. However, we received feedback from departments that not having those funds available until the second quarter of the fiscal year delays the initiation of their projects. Our solution was to issue the 6th CPR to avoid these delays. Finally, I have requested to make a correction to the report's financial impact statement. Is that okay to?
Yeah, go ahead and we'll approve with as amended to your language.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? That's the way to do it?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. So I'd like to amend the financial impact statement and replace the sentence as follows. The recommendations stated in this report include reauthorizations totaling $278,550,818 in MICLA funding. There is no additional general fund impact for operations and maintenance costs, as these are administrative actions.
Okay, so I did have one question. I don't know if my council colleagues do.
I have some.
My question is just related to the council offices. These are some of, in my opinion, some very exciting projects. One coming to my district. I'm curious to know if you know the timeline of when it's going to start, the Sun Valley Youth Arts Center?
I'm sorry, which
The
one?
Sun Valley Youth Arts Center?
That is, once they receive the funding, they will, as far as I know, that project, that's the patio enclosure
Correct.
for the new exhibit. As soon as those funds are available, then they will begin the construction on that. I don't have a date specific, but I can certainly confirm the date.
Please, that would be great.
Okay.
We could talk to my team about that. Ms. Jurado?
Thank you. I've been on the committee for, do you hear me okay?
A little bit.
Can you hear me? How about now?
No, you're,
Okay, thank you. Oh, awesome. I just had actually, I realize I could just ask her afterwards, it's okay.
Okay, no
I don't want
worries.
to bother her.
All right, then I make a motion that with the given instructions, as amended, we approve the CAO recommendations.
Very good.
Roll call?
Councilmember Padilla?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember Jurado?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, very good. Now we are going to take up item 6.
Okay.
Could we, please read for the record.
Item 6 is a motion, Padilla Price, relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code to pause the Department of Cannabis regulation from conducting any Phase 3, Round 3 retail license lottery in 2025.
Okay, we have DCR here today, don't we? Okay, can you please come forward? I believe we were going to have a verbal report. I think, are you prepared to give that before we vote on item 6? Okay. Oh, never mind, this is for item 1, correct? Okay, then let's vote on item 6. Or anybody have, do you guys have any questions related to item 6?
No.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's take questions for 6, that's right. Forgot about 1.
First of all, welcome back, Michelle.
Can you all hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I
Good morning.
understand the intent of Councilmember Padilla's motion regarding kind of putting a pause on round 3. Other than, I mean, there's nothing in the municipal code. Can't we just instruct you not to have the lottery?
Ostensibly, yes.
Okay, so there's no need for us to, I mean, there's nothing in there that says we're going to have it on December 20, I mean,
There's
part
no
of
date in the code,
2025.
there's no date in our current code that.
So we can just tell you as a committee, pause the lottery and move that on to council, and that will.
I defer to the CLA or the clerk or whatever, but I think so, yes, I think you
Okay.
could instruct us to halt, pause, and whatever you want.
Okay. If the clerk is here and wants to clarify, I'd be more than happy to learn about it. But colleagues, one of the reasons why my team and I, and the other day I recently hosted in my district a cannabis stakeholder meeting where I felt it was important to bring people together to tell me about what is working, what is not, what needs to change, how do we improve things, and whether you were in delivery, manufacturing, cultivation, retail, there was a consensus that we really needed to take a step back before we can really figure out what's next. A lot of issues and a lot of concerns related to enforcement, a lot of issues related to taxation, a lot of information requested as it pertains to fees, how fees are developed and what they're used for. I think we heard a little bit more about that today. And here's the thing, I think right before you came back, Michelle, welcome back, we really needed you back. On the newsletter that you send out to your stakeholders, there was already a news, something sent out to the public about how you were going to start a round very soon, and then another one closer to sometime in the fall. So given what we are, trying to explore until we feel like it's time to bring more players into this industry, Council Member Price and I felt that it was important to take that pause. Now that you're back, don't get me wrong, I put in a motion to also figure out consumption lounges and events. It's actually something that I hope and will work with our formal Chamber of Commerce's to figure that out. It's important for me that we figure this out because I see this as a revenue space for the city. But I think we need to be methodical. And the first step to being methodical is to getting it right with who's already in line. So that's why I hope that we can count on.
I agree with you, Madam Chair. I just thought it would be much easier and faster just to amend the motion, just to instruct DCR to just not have the lottery.
Okay, is that a technical amendment to the motion? Okay.
Yeah, this is Josh Strickland, CLA's office. I think that's a technical amendment you can make.
Okay, well, I'll accept it.
Okay.
We need a vote on that, I believe?
Yes, so you wish to amend the motion to include instructing the DCR to pause the lottery, is that correct?
Correct. Do you have any questions for this item?
No questions.
Okay, well then let's vote as amended.
Very good.
Instruct.
Okay,
You'll
Councilmember
be the first, I'll
Padilla?
be the second.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Lee first, and I'll second.
Okay. Councilmember Lee then?
Aye.
And Councilmember Jurado?
Yes.
Very good, this matter is approved as amended.
Okay, very good. Okay, we can now move over to item 6. Item 1. We want to read item 1 for the record?
Yes. Okay. Item 1 is continued from April 23rd, 2025, May 6th, 2025, and May 20th, 2025. SEO report and Officer of Department of Cannabis Regulation report relative to the 2024 comprehensive fee study to achieve full cost recovery for commercial cannabis application, licensing, inspection, and regulatory services.
Okay. And someone else has joined. Do you want to introduce yourself? Well, you should all introduce yourselves.
Hi, good morning, council members. My name is Susie Rios-Bellana with the Office of the CAO.
I'm Michelle Garakian. I'm the Executive Director for the Department of Cannabis Regulation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jason Kleen, Assistant Executive Director for the Department of Cannabis Regulation.
Oh, we're not the commissioners, we're the council. Sorry.
Committee members, council members, I apologize.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, please proceed with your presentation.
If you could, firstly, I just want to say thank you for hearing this item today. It is certainly a time to be back from maternity leave. If you don't mind, is it all right if I just provide a few remarks? I know we have
Yeah, go
stakeholders
for
in
it.
the audience. I just want to address them now that I'm back. If that's okay. Thank you so much. So, as many of you guys know, I just returned from maternity leave, and I want to thank everybody for their patience for when I was gone. I came back, and I'm back ready to re-engage because I know this department and this community, more importantly, deserve focus, attention, clarity, and care. I appreciate your patience, I appreciate their patience and the willingness to engage with me and my team if they still have the willingness to do that. I do want to speak candidly, not just about the specific items on the agenda, but on broader challenges that we face and we must work together to fix, honestly. Over the last several weeks, I have really tried to put my head down after the baby has gone to sleep and absorbed literally everything that has been said in this committee, testimony, public comments, listening to community voices. Many concerns are rooted in decisions that were made years ago when this department was first formed. Some of those policies were simply flawed, like an initial requirement for applicants to hold on to property without a license in hand. Others reflect systematic underinvestment. When this department was launched in 2017, we only had 3 staff members and a mandate to prioritize the existing medical marijuana dispensary market. It wasn't until 2019 that the social equity program even received funding. By then, we had to issue an RFP just to begin developing a program from the ground up. Still, we tried to build something meaningful. offering priority processing, equity share review, financial assistance, pro bono legal support, coaching, educational webinars. You know, in hindsight, we probably could have done better, but we tried at the time. I do want to address today's priorities, the fee study and financial sustainability. This is central to our ability to continue to provide service. The study was undertaken to ensure our fee structure reflects the true cost of regulating the commercial cannabis industry in full compliance with city ordinance and state law. I don't know if a lot of folks in this room maybe knew, not you guys, but maybe the stakeholders knew that we are a full cost recovery department. That means we do not receive a general fund subsidy like some other departments in the city. That is difficult, I think, because when the industry or the economy is bad, it is a difficult thing to stomach. Since the last fee study in FY 2021, DCR has experienced significant growth. Our staff has increased, salaries have risen with the cost of living adjustments, and support for other city departments that we subsidize has gone up almost 137%. To meet this demand responsibly, we have used rigorous four-step methodology that blends time and effort analysis with program-based cost projections to ensure fairness, prevent double charging, capture indirect overhead like legal and financial services. These fee updates are not only a reflection of increased service demand, but also ensure that our operations are not subsidized by the general fund, preserving limited resources for the broader public services. The proposed updates will support continued improvements to our licensing services, introduce new payment options, and scale enforcement penalties for legal businesses more appropriately with a refined fine structure. This is not a financial exercise. What we're trying to do is balance our budget while not have to hit the general fund up at all by any means. We understand what happened here last week. You guys had to make very difficult choices. If it is a policy decision to dip into the general fund to subsidize the department's budget, that's something that we can suss. You know, there's, I think, a lot of stuff out there about our fee study. I do want to say that we work to try and make this as transparent as possible. We have been in Budget and Finance. We have been in this committee now, I think, 3 times talking about it. We have also presented this to the CRC on May 1st. And, you know, after today and before July 1st, legislatively, there is an ordinance that needs to be presented to this committee and to the broader council at large about this fee study. So that is in the works. It's coming, we know. You know, and so I just want to address some of the challenges that I think have been out there in the community. The lottery, I think that is a policy decision. Thank you for that today. I do understand from the community why this needs to happen at this time. Enforcement of unlicensed activity, you know, again, this does not fall in our purview, but the DCR really does work with our other agencies to coalesce this, to work to bring agencies together, to talk about this, to highlight how much of a real serious issue this is. And so I really look forward to working with this community to be part of that conversation. I really do hope you guys include DCR in that conversation because we are the tip of the spear. Land use and policy reform, you know, this is part of a report that Jason presented based on the grandfathering of the MMD motion.
Yeah, I don't think we should get into that one yet. We
Totally.
plan to put that in the next committee.
Perfect.
Today, I want to focus on the fee study.
Okay.
And I believe this is a good presentation. Let's
Got
start
it. Okay,
from
so
there.
I had a,
For the record, and everyone who's in the crowd that's curious about grandfathering, we will probably take that up very soon.
okay.
You're talking about the pre-ICOs?
Yeah.
We put in a motion related to them. We'll deal with them in the next meeting.
Okay, fabulous. I have other stuff related to just the general stuff, but I think for purposes of time and,
Yeah, I want to get
Council's
to the
gotta
fee
go.
study because I have a lot of instructions.
yeah, okay, my apologies, ma'am.
No problems.
But
You're
I just
good.
wanted an opportunity to speak to folks since I haven't been here for the last 4.5 months, so I appreciate
doing fine.
taking the time. I'm going to pass this presentation over to my colleague, Jason. Per your instruction, we did prepare a flow chart addressing what our processes look like with other agencies and
Correct.
how they're part of the process.
Yes, it's very important that that's part of the presentation. I believe, looking at the slides before this, I noticed that you did break it down also by year, where you also emphasized the randomness of what you also had to deal with per year, so I appreciate that. So it's important for us to know year by year, flow chart, and please don't shy away from mentioning the interconnectedness and the dependency that you have on other departments, because what we're trying to get to the bottom line is these are the fees you need for full recovery, and that includes both the sustainability of the department as well as the sustainability of your need to interact with other departments as it pertains to everything that is promised to a licensee holder, which includes, of course, inspections, as well as related permits. And then, of course, everyone's favorite conversation moving forward is going to be enforcement. So please proceed, and we have some instruction. I have some long instructions after. And for the for ITA, can we get the presentation on these screens so that I can look forward, not backwards? Same with these. We need these on. Okay, please proceed.
So when we talk about the licensing structure, it's important for the council to understand that there have actually been 5 distinct processing timelines. And the processing timelines have not necessarily been within DCR's control. The initial existing medical marijuana dispensaries were what some refer to as Prop D compliant or pre-ICO businesses. They had the opportunity to apply in January of 2018. Those businesses were allowed to get temporary approval once they met the definition, and we did a land use review. They did not have to go through an inspection, fire, life safety check, or anything else. The second was the supply chain for the existing medical marijuana dispensaries. Those folks were allowed to apply in September of 2018. Originally, those folks were required to go through the full annual license process, which would have required getting a certificate of occupancy, fire permits, building permits, health permits, state licenses before they could lawfully operate. How can a retailer put items on their shelves if they can't actually get the products to put on their shelves? So we worked with the council to amend the code to extend temporary approval to our phase 2 businesses. And you can see that on the slide that's up here as we're looking at the first year of DCR operation, where we have the table, and this slide will be there multiple times as we go through the different segments, but we're basically moving chronologically phase down on the left-hand side of the screen, and then years to the amendments to the municipal code to allow for more folks to have access to temporary approval as we go farther into the future. Phase 3 retail round 1, that was a council mandate in September of 2019. A lot of the speakers that have come to this committee routinely have complained about a process that was unique to 2019 and has not existed since. Then we also have the delivery services, general social equity applicants, and general applicants who all had their own unique process. For our phase 3, for our phase 1 applicants, the existing medical marijuana dispensaries, we did an eligibility determination, we did a land use review, they received their licenses. Some of those businesses met those requirements within 2 weeks of us accepting applications in January. Some of those businesses, took months to get us the information. Some of them were engaged in litigation. So a lot of what we do as an agency is we take the application, we apply the code, and folks that meet the requirements are issued licenses, and folks that have not been issued licenses are given the opportunity to cure their deficiencies for as long as it takes. When we accepted the applications for our phase 2 applicants, we actually worked with the state. Kat Packer, our former executive director, negotiated directly with the state to extend provisional licensure to the supply chain.
So correct me if I'm wrong, there's some people that still have this license but have not been able to build it out, correct?
They have not met building codes. So they have, that is a great question. So there's a couple of things going on. For like a pizzeria, A pizzeria would not be able to open up, sell pizza and beer until they had all of their permits and licenses in place, certificate of occupancy, fire permit, health permit, et cetera. For cannabis businesses, because it was an emerging market, we issued temporary approval so that they could begin to operate before they actually met building code, fire code, health code requirements. So some of these businesses have a license, but they haven't began to operate because they haven't gotten permits from other agencies yet.
How many of those are out there?
There's approximately 100 to 200 businesses that they have a physical license and they could operate if they were able to meet other agencies' requirements.
So these are the individuals that are lobbying our offices saying, we need you to help us with a public convenience or necessity permit, right? So that they can get started? That's a hypothetical, but that is essentially how it works, or what we're seeing in practice.
For the PCN, the public convenience, so right now, the code dictates different windows for DCR to accept applications. So the public convenience or necessity process, if this committee were to open it, would allow for folks to apply for a retail license in an area where, in a community plan, where we have already issued the number of licenses we can issue by right, and any additional license would be a discretionary action of the council.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I've seen it in practice. Please proceed.
In 2018, the challenges were ownership and litigation caused delays. We were starting to regulate an industry that was never regulated before. The city had never issued a permit for it in the past. There weren't actually records because it was unlawful to sell cannabis. There was the lack of information. There were different agencies throughout time that were responsible for doing an interim control ordinance, for maintaining records, and then trying to compile those records was challenging. And then, of course, the sign-offs, which we addressed. When we move into 2019, that was the first time that new applicants were able to apply, and priority was given to social equity applicants for the retail, non-storefront delivery, retail storefront, and then anybody could apply for manufacturing, distribution, testing.
Next slide, right?
Yeah. Which is on the yellow section is this area. So for phase 3 retail round 1, the city created a social equity program. General fund dollars to actually provide services had not been applied. Vendors hadn't been selected. DCR had recommended in April of 2019 not moving forward with phase 3 retail round 1. Council actually instructed us to move forward in September of 2019 and set a rigorous time frame to do that. So people who come to the podium and say, we didn't have these services when we applied, that is 100% accurate. The services didn't exist. The code said these are the requirements. You have to secure a location. You have to have an entity. You have to meet these criteria. There's a 14-day application filing window. And if you miss that window, you have to wait for the next one. There were a lot of challenges that came out of that process. There was litigation. There was delays that were outside of DCR's control. And ultimately, we learned and we worked with the council to amend the code moving into our 2022 phase, which is when we did the lottery. So instead of requiring people to have applications that had secure locations, we created a pre-application review process so that folks could pay $600 to determine whether or not their location was even suitable for cannabis activities before they submitted an application. For the lottery itself, we identified individuals who could submit the application. They didn't actually have to have a location, have an entity or anything else. They were granted a period of time. Initially, it was 1 year, and then it was extended to 3 years, which is why we had proposed doing the lottery in 2025 is the opportunities that were granted in 2022 expire in December 2025 and could go back into the pot for new applicants to try to get those opportunities. The pre-application review process, the legal business entity record, the actual application process are all things that are intended to mitigate some of the challenges that folks experienced in 2019. One of our biggest challenges now with the fee study, and as we move forward, is everything is a math equation. So if in 2018, if we had in 2018, when we only had the existing medical marijuana dispensaries, we had less than 200 businesses. So you're spreading a fixed cost of the department over 200 businesses. Then we added our phase 2 applicants. We were able to spread that cost over more people. Then we added phase 3. We were able to spread the cost over more people. Now that we're seeing, we actually got up to 1,400 licenses. And now that folks are being required to transition to state annual licensure and the state rates are high as well, folks are walking away from licensed activities that aren't generating revenue for the business. So we've seen a reduction in the number of licensed activities from 1,400 to 1,000. And a lot of those are those non-retail activities. Non-volatile manufacturing, distribution, cultivation, where the business isn't generating revenue. But if we have $1 million in fixed cost and you spread that cost over 10 businesses, each business has to pay $100,000. If you have $1 million cost and you spread that cost over 100 businesses, each business pays $10,000. Businesses would rather pay $10,000 for fees than $100,000. And then if you only have 50 businesses, everybody pays $20,000. So the fixed cost is the math equation we're solving for, and 25% of the fee increase is directly associated with going from 1,400 licenses to 1,000 licenses. Now, to think about how to adjust the fees going forward is you look at the regulatory things. We created the pre-application review process, we created the legal business entity record. We've done different things to reduce the cost for folks coming in and to mitigate some of the time impacts so that folks that are ready to go can go soup to nuts and get a license within 6 months. Folks that are going to take longer can be afforded additional time because of the process. For the taxation issue, again, we would be expecting to see $140 million in taxes every year based on the number of licenses that are issued and the actual activity happening within the regulated market. Taxes are really high. We're only collecting about $80 million, so there's a $60 million deficit. Now, we know that the state has a number in mind because their tax structure is based on hitting a number. We have a 15% excise tax. If we don't hit this number, July 1st, 2025, that excise tax automatically goes to 19% so that they can hit their number. If we want to be able to be in a position to reduce taxes, which is by far the biggest issue facing this industry, then you're looking at being able to figure out how to hit the number the city needs to hit, and then figuring out how many businesses and how many activities are needed to hit that number. And then you guys have the ability to say, okay, once we hit this number, then we can scale it back to 9.5% or 9%. But there has to be a path forward, and it has to be looked at holistically, because if you're expecting 140 million and budgeting for 140 million, you're only getting 80 million. You're already dealing with the $60 million general fund deficit.
We will get there. That's a little bit tangential. Can you get to the flow charts, please? Because I want us to discuss those with you. I want you to present these flow charts in front of the public.
Sure. In 20,
But I agree, so keep going.
In 2019, our social equity applicants did not have the benefit of business licensing and compliance assistance. No pro bono services, no coaches, nobody to help them with the process. They had to secure a location and have an entity in order to apply during that 14-day window. That was a huge challenge that people are still dealing with. Based on stakeholder feedback, we worked with the council to amend the code to create a pre-application review process. The pre-application review process is generally handled within 30 days. They submit a location, they pay their fee, they get a determination on the location within 30 days. We tell them whether or not the location is properly zoned and distanced, or it's not. Once we determine...
And you don't do that alone, right? You do it in collaboration with other departments?
Currently, we do it alone.
Okay, as you go through this, and for a time check, can you do this in the next 3 minutes? But I do need you to mention what other departments are involved.
For pre-application review, we administer LAMC code 105. 105 is directly tied to cannabis. Cannabis is not an enumerated use. Building and safety and city planning do not issue permits or variances for cannabis-related activities. So we look at a location based on that code, and we say, okay, it's properly zoned for us to issue a license. That is a complete disconnect from building and safety. Cultivation would be allowed in a commercial zone because it's a nursery or a hydroponic enterprise, but it's not allowed under 105 here with us. So we have businesses, and this was the issue with the EMMD motion, is you have businesses that are engaged in activities where they can't actually get a certificate of occupancy or a fire permit or a health permit, but the code requires them to hit those timelines by a certain time. So we need to look at our process holistically to actually align our section of the code with other sections of the code so everything works seamlessly so that folks can meet all of the requirements necessary to get operating permits. And that was what we were submitting. We would like to have building and safety have the ability to look at the zoning and make sure that they will issue a certificate of occupancy, whether it's retail, nursery, manufacturing. We would like for, if building and safety says that location is not properly zoned, for folks to seek relief with the Department of City Planning so that they can pursue an entitlement or a variance so that they can stay where they are. And then that will better align us.
It sounds like a conditional use permit, almost.
It would be the potential for the conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you for that.
One of the other challenges, of course, is DCR can't have its own cash sharing system because the revenue that's being generated is coming from something that is federally illicit. So just like our businesses don't necessarily have access to traditional banking, DCR does not have its own separate bank account. We are not collecting revenue at our cash counters. We rely on the Office of Finance, and Building and Safety was nice enough to expand their cash counters to us to allow for our customers to pay there. So some of the challenges are when somebody gets an invoice and they go and pay, they can be paying with a different city department, and we rely upon those departments to record those transactions and report back to us. That leads to unnecessary delays as well. So there are things within our process that if we can be better integrated within the city family, and now would be the time, we can become more efficient as an agency and we can provide better service to our applicants. Once a pre-app is eligible for further processing, the business has up to a year to submit their application. That's to give them time to negotiate with the landlord, get their entity together, find funding to move forward with the application. We had a temporary approval process, which is the slide that's up. Basically, we still have this process within our annual licensing process, but we no longer have temporary approvals because the state's requiring people to submit annual licenses. Temporary approval can be granted within 3 to 6 months. When we get to the last slide, we've gotten to 2 processes instead of 5 now for our annual licensing. We have one process for retail businesses. That process is when the business gets a notice of complete application, they have to do neighborhood outreach. We have to conduct a community meeting. We have to take that to the Cannabis Regulation Commission to do a public hearing. Once the commission takes an action to adopt the finding to issue an annual license, we file the notice of exemption with the county clerk, and then we can issue the annual license. The notice of exemption is the most important thing because that is what the state requires to issue the corresponding state annual license. So anything we can do between number 1 and 4 to expedite getting from 1 to 4 will help the business be able to operate and get their corresponding state license even sooner. The code has different community meeting dates and noticing dates. Those are things where if it's not 20 days or 45 days and we reduce it to maybe 10 days of notice or 20 days of, 20 days for between the community meeting and the CRC, we could save people some holding costs there to make them be more efficient in getting through our process. For our non-retail activities, you'll notice it's just a 4-step process. Everything other than retail storefront goes straight through the department. We can process these applications in less than 90 days. You know, we get to a notice of complete application. It comes to my desk. I do the review. I review the environmental analysis. If I sign off on it, we file the same week with the county clerk. Our city attorney has been great in getting those documents back, uploading them to the state Sequinet. The state issues the annual license. They're good to go. Again, we're doing those in 30 to 90 days. So we are being as efficient as possible. It's not taking years like some people have said. It did take years for some of the applicants, but the process today is not what it was in 2019. And I will conclude the presentation.
Okay, very good. Council colleagues, any questions? I will go last.
So I think this is probably for the CAO. You know, I agree with the applicants regarding it's hard to make them competitive with the black market as long as their taxes are higher. Now, this is also a big bandage to rip off for the city of Los Angeles to just eliminate this tax. So if we can have a report back to instruct the CAO on the feasibility of lowering the business tax and what that would mean for us from 10, and then in the first year to start at 8%, down to 8% for social equity applicants, so we can just have a view of what that looks like and how that would affect the budget.
Okay. Do you need a second for that?
Yes.
No.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you for that. Okay, any questions, Fidel? Okay, I'm gonna kind of give a little long-winded speech followed by some instructions, okay? So I want to thank all of you for being present here today in council chambers, given everyone's expressed concerns with security protocols after a commission meeting ended in public unrest. I can assure you that the security protocols here in City Hall are much more diligent. I hope that everyone can take some time to speak to the sergeants in the room after this meeting to fully understand the protocols if they were feeling unsafe. But I will mention that I actually prefer to go back to 401, so I hope we never see another moment like that again, so we could go back to our regular room. In regards to DCR's verbal report, I appreciate this much more improved report. It showed a lot of the things that we wanted to see. However, we have not been told about the exact same of actual time frames that it takes to process everything and how the other departments play a role. But as for today, I know that this is something that's important that we need to do in order to have a balanced budget. My job as Chair of Government Operations is not to simply ensure a balanced DCR budget, but that we have positive outcomes for the industry as a result of a good financial policy decision. I understand the importance of these fee increases to the continued functions of the industry's regulation. However, as stated earlier, we have 700 business cannabis that are tax delinquent. This means businesses are struggling in some capacities to pay their bills. So before I get to the instructions that I will be moving, I'm going to talk a little bit about social equity program too. The mission of our social equity program stated on the DCR website was this following. Cannabis criminalization has had a long-term adverse impact to the city of Los Angeles, particularly for low-income and minority community members that have been subject to enforcement of past criminal laws. And to address these harms, the City Council incorporated the social equity program into DCR's regulation. The mission of the social equity program is to promote equitable ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry with the purpose of decreasing disparities in the life outcomes for marginalized communities directly impacted by the war on drugs. And I'm not going to go into the detail, but I hope this reminds us of why we created this in the first place. That is why these are my instructions. We will include an exemption of social equity applicants from the fee increases, not the fees, but the fee increases. Let me break it down for everyone on where that puts us, given the information that has been made available to us. DCR's website states that 34% of cannabis licenses are issued to social equity applicants. The CAO reports that a denial of these fees would result in $3.7 million reduction to DCR and the related departments. An exemption of these fee increases for all social applicants would theoretically result in an approximately $2.4 million reduction. I believe this is a reduction that is manageable for DCR and will not result in layoffs. Based on the CAO report, the financial impact of $2.4 million can be offset by the following: $1.87 million through the elimination of all vacant positions, $0.03 million through the elimination of overtime and expense accounts, and $428,000 for direct and indirect costs from the personnel department. As stated in the report, if DCR had all vacancies cut, there would be no need to sustain dedicated funding from the personnel department since hiring would not be possible. I also therefore move the following instructions. Approve amending the LA Municipal Code Section 104.19 to revise fees and fines as detailed in the DCR report with an exemption clause of these fees for all social equity applicants for 3 years. Instruct the CAO to contract out an independent third-party study that reports on the revision of fee, cost, and the impacts of fees on the cannabis excise tax. The contractor should be instructed to consult with the government operations for any additional areas of concerns for the study. Instruct DCR to report back with a detailed rundown on how it's processed applications and fees from the time they are received to the time their completion is communicated with the applicant. This report should include the tools that the department uses to stay organized and communicate with the other departments involved in the processing of these applications. The report should also include estimated processing time for these applications and fees and a recommendation for improving processing times. Instruction number 4, instruct DCR to report back with a detailed rundown on how and when it utilizes its fine structures, as well as total number of fines issued each year for the past 5 years, the average number of fines issued to a business for the past 5 years, explanation of DCR procedure to ensure businesses do not repeat offending, how are the funds received from violations ultimately utilized by the department. Number 5, request the city attorney to prepare an ordinance to amend LA Municipal Code Section 104.03.I, processing timeframes, to strike through the line that reads, processing timeframes shall be automatically suspended when DCR's personnel vacancy rate is 20% or higher. It was time. Request the Office of City Attorney, with the assistance of the Department of Cannabis Regulation, to prepare and present an ordinance to amend LA Municipal Code Section 104.00 ETCEQ. Consistent with the recommendation of the Government Operations Committee. Mr. Lid, can we please call the roll? You want to amend?
Well, I just have some questions regarding her amendments. Who's our city attorney?
She's over there.
Yeah, city attorney, I mean, you need a microphone. Yes. Yeah, can we single out social equity from all the different applicants? Can we specifically say no fee increase for them, but fee increase for the others? I just want to make sure we're not doing anything illegal.
Yeah, that would be a question for our public finance group, but I don't think that you can, but we can get back to you on that.
Okay.
It could constitute a gift.
So good morning, I'm Yolanda Chavez with the CAO's office. You know, waiving or subsidizing fees is of course a policy decision, but any subsidy has to be covered by the general fund because these are fees and it's a service for fee. And if you subsidize some applicants and not others, it could constitute a tax for the others that are not subsidized. So, Madam Chair, if you're amenable, if you would allow us to report back on the impact, the cost, and the impact of the department on the offsets you proposed before the ordinance is finalized for the fee increases, that may be helpful, at least for you to know what the impact is, not only for the department, but for the general fund in 25-26, but also going forward, if that's going to be a practice of the council to subsidize the fees, because again, it would have to be covered by the general fund.
I gotta be honest, I think we've put a lot of thought into this, and we were debating whether this is like an elimination of them having fees altogether, but this is just a fee increase. So they would still be subject to the original fee cost. Also, we really want to get this done by the end of the fiscal calendar. So I would need to know from you if you can get it done before, if we can get this done before then.
Jason,
Or else I would like to move forward with the instructions today. Because my understanding is, like you said, this is policy. We are the policy makers. We can do this.
You can't.
To answer Mr. Lee's question.
You can subsidize or waive, but the general fund would have to cover that. So we can get you a report back for your next meeting, and definitely before July 1st.
Jason Kleen for the Department of Cannabis Regulation. For the fee study itself, the fees can remain fixed, and we got the cannabis equity grant from the governor's office. Dr. Brown and her team got us
Who no
$3.5
one
million.
understands whether you still have it or not.
We got $3.5 million for calendar year 2025, which runs through October of next year. We have the ability to use those grant funds to waive fees. So if it's this committee's prerogative, we can waive the delta between the base fee and the higher fee for the social equity applicants using the grant funds to mitigate the impact to the general fund. That could be an option to
But how long
use
would that last?
we have $3.5 million. So if the analysis that was done is we would need $2 million over the next year to cover the cost, we would be able to cover it within the $3.5 million appropriation that we already are going to be getting from the governor's office. We get it in like $800,000 increments.
And this would be for the California Equity Grant that is distributed from the Governor's Office of Business Development, not from the DCC. These are two separate grants. There's LJAG and CEG. This would be CEG.
I hear Madam Chair's concerns about this program, and I also understand how the budget has come to be and how fragile it is. And so I'm respectfully requesting that DCR and CAO report back on these two options of the increased fees for all social equity applicants, of that clause of her motion from number 1. If you can report back of the statewide grant that you will can receive to subsidize this, to minimize and zero the impact to the general fund, I think that would be fabulous. And then for also the CAO to report back as well.
And Madam Chair, I mean, it sounds like our chair has done a lot of extensive work in trying to identify the funds that would go to cost, to cover these costs. If we can have a report back to make sure, just to, dot our i's, cross our t's, if we can report back on everything that Madam Chair talked about, and as far as the independent third-party study, I'm totally in agreement with you to come back with us a way to, what does that cost us? How do we fund, something like that? And then Madam Chair requested something about, I don't really understand about the pausing of if the DCR goes below a certain amount of, will that allow us to meet our state mandates if we do something like that? Like are there any issues?
I understand what Madam Chair is saying, and I think that it's quite an appropriate ask. So we're happy to report back on that.
So I'm revising my amendment to the motion to have a report back by DCR and the CAO and city attorney to report back on the feasibility of the exemption of the increased fees and to come back before July 1st to this committee with the report back.
Okay, so I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
But I'm going to make another change to that. So for the record, Mr. Clerk, you're probably really confused. Things that I mentioned as item 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 remain the same. But for the first one, it sounds like what we're asking for now, and I'm going to add more to what you said. Approve amending the LA Municipal Code Section 104.9 to revise fees and fines as detailed in the DCR report, with a report back on what it would mean to create an exemption clause for these increased fees for all social equity applicants for 3 years. In addition, I motion that we ask DCR to align the continuation of this program to 2031 to be in line with the state. Do I need a second?
No.
Okay, then I think we can call the roll.
All right, as amended here, Councilmember Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
and Councilmember Jurado.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, anything else on the
That clears the desk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes this meeting.